Hey there, deep divers. It's
Yeah.
funny. It's like hustle harder used to be the thing,
Yeah.
right? But lately, it feels like everybody's hitting a wall. Like,
Yeah.
is it just me? Or,
Right.
you're not alone in feeling that pressure to, do more, be more, achieve more, all that. So we're diving into some fascinating insights from a recent episode of the Daily Conversation that really kind of hit home for me.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about how this whole overworking thing, it might be more myth than magic bullet. You know what I mean? Get this, apparently there's a whole bunch of research now that says taking breaks can actually make you more productive.
Wild, right?
It really is. It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But think of it this way. Your brain isn't like this, bottomless well of energy, just like any muscle after you work it out, it needs a break, right? Your
Yeah.
brain needs downtime. It needs to process information, recharge those batteries.
It's true. I can't tell you how many times I've hit that afternoon slump and just like, more coffee, thinking that's the answer, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
only to end up feeling even more fried. But what I found really interesting was how they were talking about time blocking. Have you heard of this? As a way to like combat that feeling of being pulled in a million
Oh,
directions.
absolutely. And that feeling, that pull in a million directions, you know what that is? That's context switching.
Uh,
And that's a huge energy drain because your brain is constantly having to readjust, refocus every time you switch from one thing to another.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like going from email to like prepping for a presentation to then, oh, got to hop on this meeting all in an hour.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Oh, no
that's
wonder we're
the
exhausted.
recipe for burnout right there. But with time blocking, what you're doing is you're kind of creating this roadmap for your day. You're giving yourself permission to say, okay, for this hour, this is my focus.
Hmm.
And that minimizes those disruptive context switches so you can actually, you know, tap into those deeper levels of concentration.
Yeah. It's like giving your brain a break from constantly making decisions so it can actually, focus on the task at hand.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of another kind of simple but powerful technique they talked about, the Pomodoro technique.
Yes. The 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
Hmm.
It's funny. It seems almost too simple, but it works wonders for so many people because it actually aligns with our natural ultradian rhythms.
Ultradian rhythms. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So tell me about how this Pomodoro thing like taps into our biology. I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff.
Well, think about it. Instead of fighting those natural peaks and dips in our energy we have throughout the day,
Yeah.
the Pomodoro technique actually works with them. It's like riding those waves of focus and rest instead of trying to, like, swim against the current.
That's such a great analogy because it's so true. And I've tried Pomodoro before and have to say there's something really satisfying about those short bursts of focused work followed by a break.
Right.
It feels doable. It's not this like hours on end kind of thing.
And that's the key word right there. He feels manageable. You're not just like white knuckling it until you're totally spent. You're giving yourself those built-in intervals to rest and recharge.
It's like we're working with our natural energy, not against it, which I love that.
Hmm.
And speaking of, refreshing and recharging, they also talked about their own personal reset routines, things that they do outside of work to unwind.
Hmm.
One was all about the gym, another loved getting lost in a good book, and the other one, nature walks. It just highlighted that there really is no one-size-fits-all approach here.
Right, and that's what's so interesting about this.
Hmm.
Just like work styles, we all have different ways of kind of recharging our batteries. What
Hmm.
matters is finding what works for you, what helps you disconnect from work and tap into, a sense of flow, mastery, that connection piece.
Because ultimately, those activities, whether it's hitting the gym or reading or nature, it's not just about relaxation, right? It's giving our brains that chance to process, make connections, come up with new ideas. It all kind of,
It's essential.
yeah.
It's essential to prevent that burnout, to maintain that sense of well-being. And that actually makes us more effective and more engaged when we are working.
Right, right. It's like they say, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. Exactly. You have to fill your cup first.
And what I love about this whole work smarter, not harder approach is that it really is about finding those small tweaks and adjustments, It can make a huge difference in how we approach not just our work, but our lives.
Absolutely. It's about finding what works for you,
Mm.
and building that sustainable system that supports your productivity into your well-being. Because let's face it, what's the point of it all if we're completely burned out?
I love that. It's about finding that sweet spot,
Yeah.
where we can do great work, but not at the expense of like our health and happiness and sanity.
Exactly.
So what are like some key takeaways from the daily conversation that, we can actually implement like today to make our work lives a little bit brighter and maybe a bit more balanced.
Yeah.
What resonated with you the most?
I think one of the biggest things for me, and I think they did such a good job of driving this point home, was really challenging that myth that taking breaks is for the weak.
Right.
Breaks are not the enemy of productivity. They're essential for it.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's like hitting the reset button for our brains, just like you were saying. And speaking of finding those reset moments, what I also loved from the episode was this idea that there's no one right way to be productive.
Yeah.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Absolutely. We're all wired so differently. And what works for one might not work for another. The key is to be curious, experiment, and pay attention to what makes you feel most energized, most engaged with your work, you know?
And that's where those personalized reset routines come in.
Exactly.
Like you said earlier, one was all about the gym, one was nature, one was books.
Exactly. It's about what helps you disconnect and tap into those states of flow or mastery or connection that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
For some people, it might be physical running, gym, even just like putting on music, dancing it out in your living room.
Right, whatever works, yeah.
And for others, it might be something more creative, like painting, writing, music.
Yeah.
Or for others, even just spending time in nature, reading a good book, catching up with friends.
It's about those activities that light you up,
Exactly.
that make you feel more alive, more engaged, even if it doesn't seem like directly related to work, you know?
And that's the thing, when you engage in those activities that bring you joy and fulfillment outside of work, you're investing in your overall well-being.
Yeah.
And that spills over into every area of your life.
It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats, you know?
Ah.
It's when you prioritize your well-being, everything else just seems to kind of click a little bit better.
I love that.
And it's about finding that balance where you can pursue your goals without sacrificing your health or happiness or your sanity. It's finding that sweet spot.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the most, empowering takeaways from that conversation was just realizing that small changes, even small changes to how we structure our work, our rest, can have a huge ripple effect, not just on our output, but how we feel.
Yeah, it's like we have more control than we think.
Exactly.
Sometimes those small changes feel a lot less overwhelming than like trying to do a complete overhaul on your life, you know?
100%. It's just about starting small, experimenting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's setting some boundaries around your work hours so you're not constantly checking emails late at night.
Right.
Or incorporating a 15-minute walk into your afternoon just to kind of clear your head.
Or even just, that commitment. I'm going to try the Pomodora technique for a week. Let's just see how it goes.
Exactly.
Approaching it as an experiment.
That's it. That's the key. Because there's no right or wrong answer. It's about finding what works best for you.
And that's where that self-awareness comes in. Paying attention to your energy levels when you're feeling most creative, when you need a break, that kind of thing.
Tuning into your own body's natural rhythms.
It's so important.
Honoring those cues instead of trying to power through them. And giving yourself permission to rest. No guilt.
It's true. Like, we're not machines.
We're humans.
Yes.
And we have those complex emotions, energy levels, needs. We got to honor those.
Yeah, and when we do, I think we're not only doing ourselves a favor, but we're setting ourselves up to do better work, be better in our lives.
Absolutely, yeah. It all comes down to that.
It's so true. It's so true. And I love this whole idea of shifting away from this, like, I need, work-life balance and more toward this, like, work-life integration, where it's like finding the synergy between everything.
Yes, yes. Because it's not about separating those areas of our lives. It's about recognizing that they all impact each other.
Exactly.
And when we can find ways to integrate them in a way that feels good, that feels sustainable, that's where the magic happens.
So it's not an accident. It takes effort, right? It takes that self-awareness, that willingness to experiment, just like we were saying before, to find what works.
It's a journey. It's not a destination.
It really is.
And I think that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah.
There's always something to learn, something new to try as we all evolve and grow.
And as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, my challenge to you listening is, what is one small change that you can make this week to create a more sustainable and fulfilling work life for yourself?
Yes, love that.
Is it that 15-minute walk? Is it trying out the Pomodoro technique, setting those boundaries with your work hours, something like that? Just approach it with that curiosity,
Yeah.
Experiment and that commitment to really put your well-being first.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when we feel our best, we do our best work.
And when we do our best work, it ripples out. It creates those positive changes in the world around us.
Absolutely.
So well said. So well said. And on that note, until next time, be divers.
It really is a whole new way of thinking about productivity, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Instead of thinking about breaks like, ugh, I'm losing time, it's more like, no, this is an opportunity, you know, to rest, recharge, and then come back even stronger.
Hit the reset button.
Exactly.
And speaking of those reset moments, I also loved how they were saying, again, like there's no one-size-fits-all approach here.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you, whether that's time blocking, Pomodora technique, a little of this, a little of that.
Yeah, we're all wired so differently, and what works for one person might be a complete flop for someone else.
Yeah.
You know? Just be curious, experiment, figure out what is it that makes you feel the most you know? The most energized and engaged with your work.
And that's where I guess like those reset routines really come in.
Yes.
Like you said, one is gym, one was nature walks, books.
It's about
But
what helps you disconnect, right?
Yep.
And get into those like flow states, that mastery, that sense of connection. You know,
Yeah.
Some people it's physical,
yeah,
running, hitting the gym. Some people it's throwing on some music and like dancing it out in your living room. Whatever works.
right.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
And then for some people, it's creative, painting, writing, music, or even just being in nature, like you said, reading a good book, catching up with friends. There's no right or wrong answer.
It's those activities that like light you up.
Exactly.
Make you feel more present, more engaged, even if it doesn't seem like it's quote unquote productive in that like work sense, you know?
Exactly. And that's the thing. When you engage in those activities, those things that bring you joy and fulfillment outside of work, it's like you're making that investment in your well-being.
Yeah.
And that has a ripple effect into every area of your life, including work.
It does. It's like that whole thing. A rising tide lifts all boats.
I love that.
When you prioritize you, everything else just kind of falls into place a little bit better.
Sure, true.
You know? It's about finding that balance. I keep coming back to that word.
Yeah.
Where you can go after your goals, you can have those aspirations, but not at the expense of your health or happiness or your sanity. And I think that's one of the things that they emphasized in that daily conversation episode that was so powerful, was this idea that even small changes, you know, little tweaks to how we structure our work, our rest, can have such a huge ripple effect, not just on how we get done, but also how we feel while we're doing it.
It's like we have more control than we think, you know?
Absolutely.
Sometimes those small changes feel a lot less scary than like, oh my gosh, I got to overhaul my entire life.
Exactly. 100%. It's about starting small, experimenting with it. Maybe it's setting some boundaries around your work hours so you're not on email until, 10 p.m. every night. Maybe you work in a 15-minute walk in the afternoon just to get outside, clear your head.
Or just that commitment of like, okay, I'm trying Pomodora for a week. Let's see what happens.
Yes.
I'm going to experiment.
That's it. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's all about what works best for you.
And that self-awareness, just being in tune with your energy levels when you're most creative, when you need a break.
Tuning into your own body. It's so important. Yeah.
Honoring those cues, not trying to push through it when you really desperately need a break, and giving yourself permission to rest.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. No guilt.
No guilt, because we're not machines. We're humans.
Right, not machine.
We have these complex emotions and energy levels and needs, and we have to honor those.
It's giving ourselves permission to be human, not just these like productivity robots,
Right.
And, as we're kind of wrapping up here, what's really sticking with me is it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's not just about finding that one productivity hack.
Right.
Or like checking off all the boxes on our to-do list.
It's about so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's really about creating a more sustainable, more fulfilling way of not just working, but living.
Totally.
And recognizing that our well-being, it's not separate from our productivity. It's actually the foundation.
I love that. Yeah, it's like we talk about like work-life balance, but it's more like work-life integration, right?
Yes, exactly.
Finding those connections.
It's not about separating those areas of our lives. It's about finding how they can actually work together.
Exactly.
When we can do that in a way that feels good, that feels sustainable for us, that's when the magic really happens.
That's when it all clicks, yeah. And it's not an accident. It takes effort.
It does.
It takes that self-awareness, that willingness to experiment, like we keep saying, to find what truly works for you.
And it's a journey. It's not like you arrive at the destination and you're done.
It's always evolving.
Exactly. It's ongoing. And Honestly, that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah.
There's always something new to learn. There's always something new to try. As we change, we figure out what works.
So as we wrap up, my challenge to you listening is, what's one small change you can make this week to create a more sustainable, more fulfilling work life for yourself?
I love that. What is that one thing?
Is it that 15-minute walk? Is it finally trying out the Pomodora technique, setting some boundaries with your work hours? Whatever it is, approach it with that sense of curiosity.
Yes,
Experiment. And remember to put your well-being first.
because when we feel our best, we do our best work.
So true.
And when we do our best work, that creates a ripple effect.
Yes.
It impacts the world around us in such a positive way.
It all comes back around full circle. Such a great conversation. Thank you so much for diving into this with me.
This was fun. I love talking about this stuff.
Me too. And until next time, deep divers, take care.